You wanna guess the color of my underwear? You wanna know what I got going on down?
Hello, my darlings. Welcome back to Front Row with Audrey Charlyes. This is season 2, episode 4. New York Moment of Truth. Guys, New York always reveals more than it announces. It does not seduce in the way Paris does. It does not intellectualize in the way London often prefers. It does not project control perfection like Milan. New York observes, it responds, it reflects its time with remarkable precision. And this season, what New York reflected was an industry searching not for novelty, but for grounding. There was less exaggeration, less performance for the sake of visibility. Instead, there was discipline, a return to construction, proportion, and identity. You could sense designers asking themselves a simple but profound question: who are we now? And nowhere was that question more present than at the very, very beginning. Marc Jacobs opened the season in a setting that felt intentionally intimate. There was no excessive staging, no elaborate theatrical environment. The focus remained firmly on the clothes and on the silhouettes themselves. And those silhouettes, my love, they carried weight. The collection explored volume, but not in a chaotic way. Shoulders were sculpted with architectural precision. Coats extended outward with controlled exaggeration, creating shapes that felt protective, almost armor-like. They were long wool coats in deep, enveloping blacks, structured dresses that held the form with quiet rigidity, fabrics that did not flow loosely, but maintain the posture. This was not fragility. This was defense. Marc Jacobs presented a woman who understands her environment, a woman who moves through uncertainty without losing composure. The palette remained restrained. Black, charcoals, muted neutrals, reinforcing the emotional tone of the collection. It felt introspective. It felt deliberate. And perhaps, most importantly, it felt honest. There was no attempt to recreate past triumph. No attempt to reassure the audience through nostalgia. Only a designer fully engaged with his present moment. And that alone, my love, made the show very, very powerful. Michael Kors. He transported his audience into a different emotional space entirely, where Marc Jacobs presented introspection, Michael Kors presented assurance. The setting itself felt elevated, almost cinematic. Lighting was warm, flattering, designed to enhance the textures of the garments rather than overpower them. The collection embraced fluidity. Long coats in rich camel tones moved gracefully with the body. Evening dresses in liquid fabrics reflected light with subtle brilliance. Knitwear appears soft yet structured. reinforcing the balance between comfort and elegance. We may have to revisit that one. There was an emphasis on wearability, but never at the expense of refinement. Michael Kors understands that his woman is active. She travels, she attends, she exists in environments that require adaptability. They were clothes designed to accompany her life, not interrupt it. There was no insecurity in this collection, only experience. I can see it again. Calvin Klein. The brand remained faithful to its essential philosophy, restraint. The space itself reflected that philosophy. Minimal control. Free of an unnecessary distraction, the clothes followed the same logic. Long, clean coats with precise tailoring, neutral tones, ivory, black, sand that allowed construction to take precedence over decoration. There was sensuality, but it was subtle. It emerged through proportion, through the way fabric followed the body without clinging to it. Calvin Klein does not rely on excess to communicate strength. No. Its authority lies in precision. This collection reaffirmed that. Now, one of my darlings, Sergio Hudson. Precision refined through time. His show carried a distinct emotional resonance. 10 years of building a brand brings clarity, and that clarity was visible in every look. The tailoring was exceptional. Jackets were cut with exacting precision, defining the waist while maintaining structural integrity. Trousers extending to the leg cleanly, creating elongated silhouettes that reinforced presence. There was an emphasis on monochromatic looks, deep blacks, powerful reds, refined neutrals, allowing silhouette to remain the focal point. Nothing felt accidental. Everything felt earned. Sergio Hudson understands proportion deeply. He understands how clothing interacts with posture, movement, and confidence. His woman does not rely on decoration to establish herself, which she relies on structure. Okay? Christian Siriano. Celebration, movement, and authenticity. His show carried an entirely different emotional energy. There was celebration in the room. The atmosphere felt inclusive, welcoming, vibrant, and that spirit translating directly into the clothes. Siriano explored volume in a joyful way. Full skirts with dramatic movement, structured gowns that enhance presence without overwhelming the wearer. There were bold colors, rich texture, fabrics that cut light and created visual rhythm as model moved. What made the show truly remarkable, however, was the diversity of the women presenting the collection. Different bodies, different presences, different energies, yet the clothes adapted seamlessly. This is Siriano's strength. He designs with understanding, not limitation. Carolina Herrera, femininity grounded in reality. They presented a show that felt both intimate and assured. The space itself carried a certain calm. There was no attempt to overwhelm the senses. The focus remained entirely on the dialogue between the clothes and the woman wearing them. The collection explored femininity through structure and movement. Crisp white shirts were reimagined with exaggerated cuff, extending past the wrist in a way that felt intentional rather than decorative. Full skirts held the volume with quiet discipline, creating silhouettes that occupied space without appearing heavy. Wear long coats in refined wool, tailored to follow the body's natural line without restricting it. Evening pieces introduced subtle luminosity, fabrics that reflected light gently rather than demanding attention. What made the presentation particularly compelling was the presence of women who did not appear interchangeable. Each woman carried her own rhythm, her own posture, her own identity. The clothes did not erase individuality, they reveal it. Okay? She understands that elegance is not created through uniformity. It is created through distinction. Let's get into coach, memory, youth, and American identity reinterpreted. They delivered one of the most emotionally resonant shows of the week. The atmosphere felt intentionally grounded. There was a sense of familiarity, references to youth, to memory, to lived experience. The collection explored layering extensively. Oversized leather jackets worn over delicate garments created tension between strength and vulnerability. Shearling coats appearing protective, almost cocooning-like, reinforcing the emotional tone of the collection. Denim was treated with respect, elevated beyond its casual origins through careful construction and proportion. Dresses introduced softness, balancing the heavier outwear. Coach has developed a remarkable ability to revisit American culture symbols without becoming nostalgic. They refine memory. They do not replicate it. Proenza Schuler. They presented a collection defined by exploration. There was experimentation in proportion. Dresses that follow the body closely before extending outward unexpectedly. Fabrics that alternated between fluidity and rigidity within the same garment. The color palette remained controlled. Black, creams, muted tones, allowing silhouette and texture to remain central. You could sense a house allowing itself to evolve, not abandoning its identity, but expanding it. Moments of transition often reveal a brand's true character. Proenza Schuler approached that transition with intelligence. Tatham, Carl Mayer, Ulla Johnson, Anna Sui, the intellectual cores of New York. These designers represent the intellectual and emotional depth of New York Fashion Week. Farm presented sculptural silhouettes that emphasized strength. Coats held architectural integrity, maintaining their shape regardless of movement. There was a clarity in construction that reflected discipline. Carl Mayer explored restraint. The garments appear effortless, yet the simplicity concealed remarkable precision. Long coats in neutral tone move fluidly, reinforcing elegance without excess. Ulla Johnson introduced emotional texture, rich fabrics, intricate detailing and thoughtful layering created garments that felt personal. Her work carries warmth, a connection between garment and wearer. Anna Sui, meanwhile, she remained loyal to her imaginative universe. Her collection introduced color and rhythm into the season. Patterns, texture, and silhouettes created visual energy without losing coherence. There, these designers reaffirmed New York intellectual independence. Laquan Smith controlled glamour. He presented glamour with clarity. The silhouettes emphasize the body without restricting it. Dresses follow natural curves while maintaining structure. Fabrics reflected light, creating movement in stillness. There was no hesitation in his vision, okay? Every look communicated confidence. Laquan Smith understands the emotional relationship between clothing and presence. His garment enhanced it. Now, guess who brought back fashion into the street? Bronx and Banco. They transformed the relationship between fashion and environment by presenting the show directly in the street of New York. The city itself became part of the presentation. Buildings framed the silhouettes. Natural light interacted with the fabrics. The unpredictability of the street introduced authenticity that no control venue could replicate. The clothes carried that same confidence. Structured dresses define the body with precision. Metallic fabrics reflected the surrounding cityscape. Silhouettes occupied space fully without hesitation. There was movement, energy, reality. By stepping outside traditional boundaries, Bronx and Banco reminded us that fashion does not exist in isolation. It exists in life. On to my coup de cœur, 7 for all mankind. Discipline and evolution. And then this was my favorite. Why? Because they delivered a collection defined by discipline. Denim was elevated beyond casual wear. Jackets were constructed with architectural precision. Trousers followed clean, elongated line, reinforcing body's natural structure. There was restraint. No unnecessary complication. No excessive layering. Just clarity and chaos. The fabrics carried weight without heaviness. The silhouettes maintained authority without rigidity. What made the collection remarkable was its composure. 7 for all mankind did not attempt to reinvent itself abruptly. It refined itself. And refinements requires confidence. Refinements require confidence. Now, Makamali. They chose an exhibition rather than a runway. This allowed the garment to exist without interruption. Each piece could be observed fully. Construction appreciated, detail understood. It was a decision rooted in reflection, a reminder that fashion presentation continues to evolve. Yes, this episode is longer than usual, but that's fashion. You never know what you're gonna get. What New York revealed this season is that designers understand themselves. There was clarity. There was discipline. There was intention rather than attempting to overwhelm. New York focused on building, refining, strengthening. New York does not depend on illusion. No, it doesn't. It depends on conviction. And this season, that conviction was unmistakable. And my love, that was Front Row Season 2, Episode 4, New York. New York, New York. See ya.
You wanna guess the color of my underwear? You wanna know what I got going on down there? Is it pretty in pink?